On this episode of The Road Chose Me, I'm exploring Malawi and its stunning lake, and then Tanzania. After a quick stop in the capital city of Lilongwe, I make my way down to Cape Maclear on the southern tip of Lake Malawi. This is the campsite I find. I think I better stick around. It soon becomes clear that life in Malawi revolves around the lake. From sunrise to sunset, people are out washing clothes, gathering water, doing all of life's necessities right down on the lake. We rent kayaks and go for a paddle down the lake to a nature reserve. Here, away from the village, it's much cleaner and clearer than I had anticipated. It's really beautiful. Of course, I need to go for a swim in the hot sun, and we also borrowed some snorkeling masks. The world underwater is not at all what I was expecting. Look at these fish. It's like being out on the ocean where there's coral reef. Of course, there's no coral here, but there certainly are a lot of colourful fish. My GoPro doesn't do the greatest job of showing you how colourful or how big these fish are, but I was really impressed. I had no idea it would be like this underneath the surface. Here you can see how beautiful and blue the water is. It really was like that in real life. The sun streaming down was amazing. And of course, paddling around in the kayaks is great fun too. We spot lots of baboons on shore, and there are a lot of birds flying around trying to swoop down and get the fish. We tear ourselves away from one paradise and slowly move north along the lake, finding one after another stunning campsite right on the lakeshore. We hear about a fantastic place to camp called Mushroom Farm. It's set in the mountains high above the lake and apparently has stunning views out over the valley and the lake below. So we start driving up this road. You can see it's pretty mellow at the start, but those mountains far in the distance, basically that's where we're going to the top of. So in the next few miles, we have to go all the way up that. Not surprisingly, the road gets really steep and has some severe switchbacks in it. Once again, it's nothing the Jeep can't handle, but I do have to wonder how interesting it would be in the pouring rain. On some of the switchbacks, they've poured concrete, I guess in an attempt to stop erosion. This presents a bit of a problem for me because I don't want to go around a corner that sharp in low-range four-wheel drive. I feel like it just puts too much stress on the diffs and the whole drivetrain. So at each switchback, I stop, take the Jeep out of low range, go around the corner, and then put it back in low range again to climb the steep hill. I'm using low range not so much because of I need the traction, but because I want to go so slow over the rough ground. With the weight of the Jeep, low range first in the Rubicon comes in handy a lot. It's climbing up long, steep ascents like this that make me thankful for the mechanical fan and hood vents I installed way back in Mali. On a climb like this, I keep the revs at about 2000 RPM, so the mechanical fan is doing ample cooling. The electric fan won't even kick on unless I was to turn on the air conditioning. I prefer to leave it off on a climb like this to really minimise the underhood temperatures as much as possible. So was the climb worth it after all? I'll let you decide, but I sure think it was. Malawi is only a small country and our stay has been short. Now it's time for the mighty Tanzania. We race across to Dar es Salaam and move around the city trying to get a few jobs done. The traffic is insane. I leave the Jeep in a secure parking lot and we jump on a ferry straight across to Zanzibar. This is one government sign the Jeep will never get to see. Stone Town is extremely bright and colourful, full of amazing sights, sounds, and friendly people. It would be so easy to spend a week or two here. Make no mistake about it, this really is island paradise. Over on Prison Island, they even have these giant tortoises hanging around. The northern tip of Zanzibar gets even more tropical. I go snorkeling with dolphins, hang out with some locals, and eat amazing seafood. I even check out these red colobus monkeys who are super unique to Zanzibar. I definitely have never seen a monkey that looks like that. After Zanzibar, I pick up the Jeep and then drive clear across to the centre of the country. While out exploring back roads, I come across this small river crossing. It would be no problem at all, except for the truck stuck near the exit. The Jeep doesn't have any trouble, but there is some pretty good wheel spin. When I first dreamed of this expedition, I thought that I might climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. Unfortunately, now that I'm here, I've figured out that the absolute cheapest way to do it is $2,000 by the time you pay all the mandatory park and guide fees. As you can guess, that's way too rich for my blood, so I content myself with camping around the back and enjoying the mountain for 24 hours. Nearby, I find this natural spring, which is just as refreshing as it looks. I decide to skip all the super expensive national parks, and instead I find this great campsite right on the shores of mighty Lake Victoria. To save driving down and around, I decide to catch a ferry across a small segment of Lake Victoria. This is waiting to get on board, and these buses here are all jostling for position. The drivers are yelling and screaming and revving their engines because they want to make sure they get on the ferry this time and not have to wait for the next one. In a strange twist of fate, about an hour after we get off the ferry, one of these buses is upside down in the ditch. The crazy driving in Tanzania has its consequences. This is the view on board the ferry just after we pulled away. All in all, the ferry took about half an hour and only cost $3. Well worth it in my opinion. Once on the other side of the lake, I drive north along the shore and I become fixated on finding a great wild camp for the night. So I start exploring down every small track and offshoot that I can find. I go down this one for quite a long way, but end up surrounded by a whole horde of kids who are really excited to see me. It kind of would have worked for camping, but all of the kids just mean that I'll never get any peace and quiet. However, here's the view I got when I just walked 10 meters away from where I left the Jeep. A bit further on, I did end up finding a bit of a hunkering wild camp right on the edge of the pine plantation. It's amazing sometimes, you can be close enough to a village to hear music, but nobody ever actually finds your camp. While that night was nothing particularly special, here's a photo of my favourite wild camp from Tanzania. I just pulled off the side of a gravel road and there was absolutely nobody around at first, but then slowly locals kept coming towards me. We didn't share a language, but we managed to convey that it would be okay for me to sleep there. After a while the kids warmed up to me and I filmed this as they were entertaining themselves when I was a bit boring just sitting in my chair. The adults didn't want me to take their photo, but I did manage to get the kids to pose and they were elated to see photos of themselves on the screen of the camera. Later in the night, one of the adults came over to borrow a flaming log from my fire. It took me a while to understand what she wanted, but I guess it makes perfect sense. It's so much easier to borrow someone else's fire than to light your own from scratch. I'm pretty sure she doesn't have a cigarette lighter. Although only small, Malawi certainly packs a punch with its stunning lake and mountains, and Tanzania has virtually everything. Both of these countries deserve a look.